Welcome to IGN's Summer of Gaming presented by Lenovo Legion. Reach your impossible. I'm Nick Limon, and joining me to talk all about the Konami press start is Matt Kim.
Hello.
And John Davison.
Hi.
Folks, I could not be more excited because I get to talk about Metal Gear Solid Delta, and I guess you do too. What did we think about the Metal Gear Solid Delta stuff that they showed? They showed a lot. They showed story stuff. They showed additional minigame stuff and secret theater stuff, and of course, Foxhunt, which is notably not Metal Gear Online. Matt, let's start off with story stuff. This is the first time we actually saw a lot more gameplay centered around all of the bosses in Metal Gear Solid 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I've played Metal Gear Solid 3 plenty of times, so I know exactly about the story stuff, and I'm excited to go for it again. But it looks good. It continues to look good is my main takeaway from these Delta trailers, and it's cool to see, you know, the pain and the fear and the agony all appear in the fear in this trailer, and you're just like, I can't wait to kick your butts again when Delta comes out.
Yeah, what about you, John? Does this build more hype, or is this at this point just give me what I already know I want?
I think it's give me what I know I want, but I do think it is showing that, you know, this game running in this engine is going to look fantastic. I mean, just the effects and stuff in it. The camera work is really beautiful, I think, as well. I mean, they've done a lot. And I think, you know, we know that they're doing, you know, multiple control modes in this as well. So there's the original control scheme, and then they're doing a modern version as well, which I think should satisfy everyone,
yes.
Hopefully. Very often with these kinds of things, whichever decision a studio makes, someone has something to complain about, but it feels like they're like, well, we're giving you both, which I think is a really smart move on their behalf. But I think it looks beautiful.
And I think that's what really has me kind of feeling confident about what I've seen with not just Metal Gear Solid Delta, but Konami in general. I think that when they released, you know, they came out swinging with the Silent Hill 2 remake, and people were like, does Konami have it in them to like make something again? And then the Master Collection came out, and admittedly, I would argue that game launched in a poor state, but over time, it has since received update after update, and Konami has acknowledged that it did not hit the mark that they were looking to, and they have made it perfect since, as good as they can, I would argue. And I think that that's what they're kind of adding the same level of attention and reassurance for longtime fans. You know, when Delta first came out, anytime you remake a classic, it's going to be met with criticism, no matter how gorgeous it looks or how accurate it is. And, you know, there was a lot of people online talking about the fact that it didn't have the greenish yellow tint on it.
Yep.
And through a series of development like roundtables, Konami's like, you know what? We've enabled it so you can have the original PS2 filter coloring on it. But if they want our opinion, you should play the new version of the game without the filter if you really want a new experience. And honestly, I think that they've done everything they can to make everyone happy at every possible level. So I'm excited. Speaking of which, the minigame stuff. The Master Collection notably lacks a lot of the minigames that made the original Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater and Subsistence versions of the game so special. Snake versus the Monkey being the big one that people are like, this is not the definitive version of the game, because I do not have Snake fighting these monkeys from Ape Escape, but now we got it. What do we think of the minigames, Matt?
I mean, I love Ape Escape, so anytime we get more Ape Escape content is good for me. Yeah, no, the Ape Escape, bringing that back, it looks phenomenal. I'm excited to play it. It's the Bomberman stuff. That's the new thing that they have that I'm
and it's it's platform specific, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, like that's an Xbox Series X and S exclusive, and you get a brief look at it in the trailer, but there are moments where you see Snake throwing a bomb, and it does that cross bomb explosion that Bomberman is known for. So they really put some thought into this new mode that they have as an Xbox exclusive. So I'm really curious about that one, because I haven't seen that one.
Now, John, I think I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, do kids even know what Ape Escape is nowadays? Like, how do you feel about this being such a big spotlight of this Konami press start?
Beyond that, do kids even know what Metal Gear is, right? I think there's
spicy. I love it.
Well, I think this is the challenge that Konami has with this period, right? I think it was very ballsy of them remaking Metal Gear Solid 3 first, because it is unquestionably the best one, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would
don't
put
know.
money
I don't
on
know.
that myself.
I think Matt might disagree with
A
that.
little debatable,
I
what
think
I
there might
wrote.
be a debate about that, but I
I
think
do think IGN has a definitive list
there's a
coming
definitive
very
list
soon.
where that might not be the number one, but I think a lot of people do feel that 3 is the best Metal Gear. So coming out of the gate and doing the one that is sort of widely beloved and remaking that one first and making a lot of decisions about what remaking a Metal Gear without Kojima in the mix looks like, with the one that everyone really has very fond feel, is a really ballsy move, especially after Konami has been kind of not doing a lot of video game stuff.
Yeah,
for a
they've been
long while.
dormant.
They kind of went dormant. They went off and did pachinko and mobile games for a bunch of time, and then they came back and went, you know what? We're gonna remake the one you really love. And we're doing it with a whole bunch of people that but not the guy that made it, and you're all gonna love it, which is ballsy.
And it's not a dissimilar kind of strategy as what they did with the Silent Hill 2 remake. I think for a lot of people, they're like, well, why would they choose the second one to remake? And I was like, well, you choose the one that everyone loves the most. That way you
There's
can...
that, but I also think in the case of Metal Gear, narratively, it's the first
Canonically,
one, right?
the first
Canonically, it's the beginning of the story. So I think if you are... I think they're being smart. If you're reintroducing the series to a new generation of players, you can't do what Kojima did and dance all over the timeline, because then you'd have to spend... I mean, it would be great for us because people would be searching for what the hell is going on in Metal Gear all the time. But I think starting with Snake Eater allows them to chronologically set things up and be like, this is what happened in the 60s, and kind of move forward from there, because the timeline dances around all over the place, but I think this actually does establish quite a lot.
It's a good entry point for people who have always been curious and have always asked, which one do I play first? I do think it's fine to just play Snake Eater and then work your way up there.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're doing this, and then next would technically be, I guess, Peace Walker, Portable Ops Peace Walker, and then Phantom Pain. Konami, if you're watching, give me Mission 51, baby. But apart from that stuff, let's talk a little bit about the online multiplayer that they showed, because they were very particular about how they framed their conversation around online multiplayer. They were very specific to point out Foxhunt, the new thing that they've developed for Metal Gear Solid Delta, is not Metal Gear Online. It looks interesting. It looks very fluid. It reminds me a lot of the kind of movement mechanics that we saw with something like Phantom Pain. But do we think that this will make the Metal Gear Online sickos happy?
What did you call them?
The Metal Gear Online. Hey, look, I'm up there with them. I played in those custom servers, baby. I want it. But that said, I am intrigued by what we see here with this Foxhunt thing.
Right. So I think you bring up a point in that it is a niche audience. There is no way in hell that this is going to be a gigantic multiplayer game. It is a niche of a franchise that an entire generation does not know what it is, right? So it's quite a risky move to be like, so we're rebooting a franchise that we've not done anything since, when was the last Metal Gear? 2014? 14 or 16. We haven't touched this franchise in 11 years. So there's an entire generation of gamers that has absolutely no idea what it is. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of millennials and Gen X jumping up and down going, oh my God, Metal Gear, right? And there's a whole generation of people going, why are you so excited? And then you ship a multiplayer game that is kind of niche on top of it.
Yeah.
It is not going to be a game that has a very large audience, but I would imagine that the players that do play it are going to be super hardcore.
They're going to be cracked. It's going to be impossible to do well.
I like that. I like that they were talking about how they were thinking about what a multiplayer online game looks like in now, but they're not going they're not making a battle royale. I don't think.
Thank God.
Right? It doesn't seem like a battle. It seems very like the core mechanic from this trailer at least is stealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you see soldiers, crawling on the grass, and they get like grass camo on their back, and then they switch to a brick wall, and it becomes brick wall. It kind of reminds me of like those prop hunt multiplayer games.
Yeah, like prop hunt, or some of the modes that were in the Splinter Cell multiplayer games back in the day, the Spy versus Mercs thing. It felt more like that, which awesome.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
I mean, it feels like it's multiplayer that leans into the strength of its main game. Back in, the late days of the Xbox 360 era, we saw a lot of multiplayer that was tacked on, and it felt forced as a way of combating resellers.
It was a thing to stick on the box, right?
Exactly.
And very often those things were made by like other studios, right? Where it was like, and sometimes it didn't even feel like the single player game, and sometimes it looked different, or it used different assets. So, hopefully this feels a little more integrated with what they've built. But yeah, I think, feeling those kind of like spy games, like I think, the Splinter Cell stuff is probably a good place to start.
I mean, I think especially in like an online like entertainment media creation influencer world that we're living in, with Prop Hunt being one of the most popular game modes, and not only Gary's mod but also a major Call of Duty release has Prop Hunt as just a dedicated game mode. So honestly, I think they were very clever with their nomenclature of Foxhunt. I think that what we saw in terms of the active camo that we kind of see from Metal Gear Solid 4, this looks way more cartoonish, way faster acting, and it feels like the goal really is a game of cat and mouse between two opposing teams. So I'm very curious to see what that game of cat and mouse looks like, because I think, my favorite boss in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is the fight with the end, and this feels like the multiplayer distillation of that, where you are also hiding in cover, trying to lay low and trying to deceive your enemy team while also trying to pull off kills in the long run. So I'm very curious to learn more, and it seems like they have a little bit more to tease before this game comes out. Do we think we're going to see any more from Delta before the game launches?
I don't know, but I think one thing that stood out to me, particularly in the stuff today, when they first announced it felt like a very serious Metal Gear reboot. And I was worried that they were kind of pushing the franchise towards a kind of very sort of I worried that it lost its sense of humor. It's clear that it hasn't.
Yeah, 100%.
In fact, it almost feels like they're leaning even harder into the humor. Like, I think, Foxhunt is going to be funny because you're going to be like goofing around, and like I would imagine that when you're playing and you're on voice chat and people are hiding and doing all this like really crazy stuff in it, that it's going to be a sort of, it is not a serious kind of like spy experience, the same as like the stuff with the Ape Escape stuff is not a serious thing, and Bomberman is not a serious thing. Like, it is like having fun with the franchise, which is like is not how this presented when they first showed it, right? It felt like we're making we're making
heraldic almost.
We're making it's canonically we're going back to the beginning, we're remaking this, and we're redoing the theme song, and it's all going to be very and it's going to look beautiful. And now it's like, all right, it's got monkeys in it.
Hell yeah. And Bomberman. I for one am just excited that we finally get the Secret Theater back, and I like that you can track down the Secret Theater episodes by holding up different troops scattered throughout the map. But that was just a little snippet of what we've got from the Konami press start. If you want even more from the press start, we've got coverage of the Silent Hill F and Bloober Silent Hill 1 remake, as well as grading the overall showcase. So if you want even more from the press start or all things gaming this summer, make sure to keep tuned to IGN's Summer of Gaming all month long.